The unexpected caretaker. Skylar Reed never imagined that a school field trip to the local planetarium would lead to her becoming the first human dragon keeper at the Interstellar Cultivation Facility. The massive complex, hidden beneath the Nevada desert, housed the galaxy's most advanced dragon breeding program, a closely guarded secret of the Galactic Alliance. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Skylar's bioscanner buzzed her through the facility's quantum shields. At 16, she stood out among the towering Zentari scientists with their crystalline skin and the floating Erovians who supervised the facility's atmospheric controls. Her worn leather boots echoed against the prismatic floor as she made her way to the incubation chamber. "Your presence here continues to perplex us, young human," hummed Director Nixos, a Zentari elder whose crystalline form refracted rainbow patterns across the walls. "Our breeding program has been refined over millennia. The dragons are not mere reptiles, they're bioengineered weapons." Skylar adjusted her protective suit, a hand-me-down that still bore the name of its previous alien owner. "With respect, Director, maybe that's why you're having problems. You're treating them like weapons instead of living beings." The incubation chamber housed rows of iridescent eggs, each suspended in anti-gravity fields. Skylar moved between them with practiced ease, checking vital signs on her tablet. Her assignment here had been an accident, a chance observation during that field trip when she calmed an escaped hatchling using nothing but soft words and patience. The Galactic Alliance, intrigued by this unprecedented interaction, offered her an apprenticeship despite significant opposition. A low rumble drew her attention to the far corner. Behind reinforced quantum glass, a newly hatched stellar drake unfurled its wings, each scale glowing with the intensity of distant stars. The alien scientists had classified it as aggressive, uncontrollable, scheduled for termination. But Skylar saw something different in those cosmic eyes. "Hey there, beautiful," she whispered, approaching the containment field. The drake's head tilted, its stellar patterns shifting from angry red to curious blue. Director Nixos and his team watched from the observation deck, instruments ready to intervene. Skylar initiated the airlock sequence, ignoring the alarmed chirps from the alien monitoring systems. "Miss Reed, our protocols explicitly forbid direct contact with unstable specimens," Nixos warned, his crystalline form pulsing with concern. "Trust me," Skylar replied, stepping into the chamber. The drake reared up, nearly touching the ceiling with its phosphorescent crest. Rather than reaching for the neural restraints like the alien handlers did, Skylar sat down cross-legged on the floor. She pulled out her tablet and began playing soft music, earth whale songs mixed with the harmonics of distant nebulae. The drake's aggressive posture slowly melted. It lowered its head, stellar patterns shifting to gentle purples and blues. The observation deck fell silent as the creature, deemed too dangerous to approach, gently settled beside Skylar like a cosmic house cat. "Impossible," muttered one of the Erovian scientists, their gaseous form swirling in agitation. The specimen's aggression metrics were off the charts. Skylar ran her hand along the drake's luminescent scales, feeling the pulse of stellar energy beneath. He was just scared. "Everything here is cold, clinical. These creatures evolved from stars, they need warmth, connection." She scratched under the drake's chin, earning a purr that resonated at frequencies usually only found in dying stars. Director Nixos descended to the chamber level, his crystalline form vibrating with barely contained questions. "How did you know it would respond to musical harmonics?" "I didn't," Skylar admitted. "But I noticed the egg's energy patterns changed when I played music during my rounds. They're not just weapons, they're intelligent, emotional beings. Maybe the problem isn't their aggression. Maybe it's that everyone's too afraid to treat them like living creatures." The drake nuzzled against her shoulder, its scales now shimmering with gentle golden light. Around them, the other eggs in the chamber pulsed in synchronized patterns, responding to the peaceful energy in the room. Skylar's tablet beeped, showing drastically improved vital signs across all specimens. "Perhaps," Director Nixos said slowly, his tone carrying the weight of centuries of protocol being questioned, we have been approaching this program from an unnecessarily limited perspective. He paused, geometric patterns of thought rippling across his crystalline surface. Would you be willing to take on additional responsibilities within the facility? Skylar smiled, scratching behind the drake's stellar-flecked ears. I think that's exactly why I'm here. Bonds beyond species. Word of Skylar's success with the stellar drake spread quickly through the facility's quantum communications network. Within days, researchers from across the galaxy arrived to observe her methods, their various forms cramming the observation decks like a living kaleidoscope of alien life. Skylar paid them little attention. She was too busy developing a revolutionary feeding program for the juvenile drakes. Instead of the standard nutrient pellets engineered by the facility's biochemists, she introduced variety, different textures, temperatures, and energy signatures that mimicked the dragon's ancestral feeding patterns among the stars. The feeding protocols have been standardized for 3 centuries, protested Dr. Lyrics, an Aerovian nutritionist whose gaseous form turned a troubled shade of orange. These creatures are designed for military application, not culinary exploration. Skylar continued preparing a mixture of plasma-infused minerals while her first drake, now named Nova, watched with keen interest. But look at their feeding behavior, she pointed out. When given choices, they naturally select nutrients that match their energy output. They're not machines, they can self-regulate. In the massive feeding chamber, dozens of dragons of various species gathered for their morning meal. Gone were the sterile automated feeding tubes. Instead, Skylar had created feeding stations that encouraged natural foraging behaviors. Young drakes learned from older ones, forming social bonds that the facility had previously thought impossible. Remarkable, murmured Professor Zenth, a quantum mind collective who had traveled from the galaxy's core to study this phenomenon. Their neural network of crystalline shards floated in formation, recording every interaction. They're displaying pack behaviors similar to their pre-engineered ancestors. Skylar moved among the dragons with practiced ease, her presence a calming influence on even the most aggressive specimens. Nova followed close behind, helping guide younger drakes and maintaining order with gentle chirps and pulses of stellar energy. The breakthrough came during an unexpected solar flare that disrupted the facility's power grid. As emergency systems struggled to maintain containment, the dragons didn't panic as expected. Instead, they gathered around Skylar, their combined stellar energy helping stabilize the facility's failing shields. It's not just about control, Skylar explained to the astonished alien scientists once power was restored. It's about trust. They protected us because we're part of their pack now. Director Nixos called an emergency meeting of the facility's governing board. The observation chamber was packed with representatives from every major spacefaring species, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Miss Reed's methods are unorthodox, Nixos admitted, his crystalline form refracting the room's light in thoughtful patterns. But the results are undeniable. Dragon aggressive incidents have decreased by 87%. Breeding success rates have doubled. And today, they demonstrated previously unknown capabilities for cooperative behavior. The quantum mind collective pulsed with interest. The human approach appears to access genetic potential we didn't know existed. These creatures were engineered from stellar matter to be living weapons, yet they display remarkable capacity for emotional intelligence. Skylar stood before the board, Nova's reassuring presence at her side. The dragons remember, she said softly. Deep in their engineered DNA, they remember soaring through nebulae and dancing with solar winds. They're not meant to be weapons. They're meant to be partners. She activated a holographic display showing recorded footage of the dragons working together during the solar flare crisis. Their movements were synchronized, purposeful, a far cry from the aggressive, unstable behavior previously considered normal. I propose a complete reorganization of the facility, she continued, her confidence growing. Less emphasis on military applications, more on cooperative development. These dragons could help us navigate dangerous solar phenomena, protect ships from radiation, even assist in terraform operations. The chamber erupted in debate, hundreds of alien voices merging into a cacophony of different languages and communication forms. Nova sensed Skylar's tension and pressed closer, his stellar scales pulsing with supportive energy. "You suggest we abandon centuries of military research," challenged a Vraxian general, his armored exoskeleton clanking as he rose in protest. "I suggest we expand our understanding of what's possible," Skylar countered. "Look at Nova. 3 months ago, he was considered too dangerous to live. Now he helps train younger Drakes and assists with facility operations. Imagine what we could accomplish if we worked with their natural instincts instead of against them." Director Nixos raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "The human perspective has merit. Our own evolution as a galactic society came when we learned to cooperate rather than conquer. Perhaps it's time our dragon program evolved as well." As the board deliberated, Skylar knelt beside Nova, scratching the sweet spot behind his stellar-flecked ears. Around them, the other dragons in the facility pulsed with quiet energy, their combined light creating an aurora of colors that danced across the chamber walls. They were no longer just test subjects or weapons, they were becoming something entirely new, a bridge between species that could reshape the future of interstellar relations. The facility was changing, and with it, the very nature of human-alien cooperation. Skylar smiled as Nova's purr resonated at frequencies that made the quantum barriers shimmer. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs came not from advanced technology or military might, but from something as simple as treating others, human, alien, or dragon, with respect and understanding. Rising tensions. Not everyone at the interstellar cultivation facility welcomed the changes Skylar had initiated. A faction of traditional researchers, led by the ambitious Vraxian scientist Commander Thex, viewed her success as a threat to their long-established protocols. The humans' methods compromise centuries of careful genetic engineering, Thex announced during a facility-wide review. His metallic exoskeleton gleamed under the quantum lights as he displayed holographic data streams. These creatures were designed for precision and power, not emotional bonding. Skylar stood her ground, Nova's reassuring presence beside her. The stellar Drake had grown considerably, his wingspan now spanning the width of the conference chamber. "The data speaks for itself," she countered, gesturing to her own displays. "Dragon performance metrics have improved across every measurable category." But Thex had come prepared. With a wave of his armored appendage, he revealed footage of a recent training exercise. A young Earthbred Drake, responding to Skylar's reformed protocols, had refused to engage in a combat simulation. "This is what your improvements have caused. These weapons are becoming docile. Useless." Director Nixos's crystalline form pulsed with concern as debate erupted among the gathered scientists. The quantum mind collective swirled in agitation, their neural network processing conflicting data streams. Even the usually serene Arovians rippled with uncertainty. Later that evening, as Skylar made her rounds in the incubation chamber, she discovered something disturbing. Several eggs had been moved to a restricted section, their energy signatures altered. She accessed the facility's quantum database, her clearance codes revealing a hidden research project headed by Commander Thex. "They're trying to reverse my progress," she whispered to Nova, who growled softly in response. The documents showed plans to isolate a group of dragons for intensive military conditioning, using methods that had previously led to dangerous instability. Before she could gather more evidence, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red warning lights pulsed as quantum barriers activated between sections. Thex's voice echoed through the communication system, "Security breach in Sector 7. All personnel clear the area." Skylar's heart raced. Sector 7 housed the juvenile Drakes, including those in Thex's secret program. Through the quantum barriers, she could see chaos unfolding. Young dragons, their stellar patterns flaring with distress, were lashing out against their containment fields. "This is what happens when we deviate from established protocols," Thex announced to the gathering crowd of scientists. The human methods have made them unpredictable. Dangerous. But Skylar saw something different in the dragon's behavior. Their movements weren't aggressive, they were defensive. Scared. Nova pressed against the barrier, his stellar scales resonating with his younger kin. The other facility dragons began to stir, responding to the distress signals. You've been provoking them, Skylar realized, accessing more restricted files through her tablet. Deliberately triggering stress responses to prove your point. The Quantum Mind Collective, processing the evidence at lightning speed, confirmed her accusation. The juvenile's neural patterns show signs of systematic aggravation. This crisis was manufactured. Director Nixos's crystalline form darkened with anger. Commander Thex, explain yourself. But Thex wasn't finished. With a series of commands, he overrode the facility's containment protocols. Barriers between sections began to fail, creating a cascade of chaos. If the human wants to prove her methods work, let her do it now. Let's see how well emotional bonds hold up against primal instincts. Skylar didn't hesitate. As others fled, she ran toward Sector 7, Nova right behind her. The scene that greeted them was one of pure chaos. Scared juvenile drakes, their stellar energy wildly unstable, were creating dangerous power fluctuations throughout the facility. It's okay, Skylar called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No one's going to hurt you anymore. She began playing the whale song harmonics that had worked so well before, while Nova projected calming stellar pulses. One by one, the juvenile drakes responded. Their erratic patterns stabilized, fear giving way to recognition. They remembered the feeding sessions, the gentle training, the respect they'd been shown. Even those subjected to Thex's aggressive conditioning began to settle. Impossible, Thex sputtered, his exoskeleton rattling in disbelief. Their combat programming should have overridden any emotional response. The Quantum Mind Collective moved to surround him, their crystalline shards forming a containment pattern. You have violated multiple protocols and endangered the entire facility. Your research privileges are hereby suspended. As security drones led Thex away, Director Nixos approached Skylar. She sat on the floor of Sector 7, surrounded by calm dragons, both juvenile and adult. Nova stood guard, his stellar patterns now a peaceful aurora of blues and greens. It seems, Nixos observed, that the true test of your methods came not from the dragons, but from those who refused to understand them. Skylar stroked a young drake's luminescent crest. They never needed to be weapons. They just needed someone to see them for what they really are, intelligent, emotional beings capable of choosing their own path. The facility's power systems stabilized as the dragons' combined energy signatures returned to normal. In the aftermath of chaos, a new understanding was emerging, one that would reshape not just the dragon program, but the relationship between all species involved in it. Crisis and revelation. The aftermath of Thex's attempted sabotage brought unexpected changes to the interstellar cultivation facility. The Galactic Alliance, impressed by Skylar's handling of the crisis, granted her full authority over dragon development protocols. But with that authority came a challenge none of them had anticipated. Deep space sensors detected an approaching solar storm of unprecedented magnitude. The facility, despite its advanced shielding, wasn't designed to withstand such intense stellar phenomena. Evacuation orders were issued across all sectors. The containment fields won't hold against this level of solar radiation, warned the Arovian chief engineer, their gaseous form flickering with anxiety. We must relocate the dragons to the orbital sanctuary. Skylar studied the holographic projections with growing concern. The sanctuary could only accommodate half their dragon population, and transport ships wouldn't arrive in time to save them all. Nova pressed against her side, his stellar scales reflecting the emergency lights. There's another way, she said, an idea forming. The dragons themselves are partially composed of stellar matter. They don't just resist solar radiation, they can absorb it. Director Nixos's crystalline form pulsed with realization. You suggest using the dragons as living shields? The energy requirements would be enormous. The quantum mind collective processed the possibilities at light speed. Previous attempts at synchronized dragon deployment resulted in catastrophic failure. The neural load was too great for their combat programming to handle. Because you tried to control them, Skylar explained, scratching Nova behind his stellar-flecked ears. But what if we asked them to help instead? The facility shuddered as the first waves of the solar storm reached them. Warning systems blared as external sensors began to fail. They had minutes, not hours, to act. Skylar rushed to the central chamber, the largest space in the facility. Nova followed, broadcasting calming pulses to the other dragons as they gathered. Hundreds of stellar scales illuminated the room, creating a living aurora of light and energy. The storm isn't just radiation, Skylar announced, her voice carrying to every dragon. It's like the solar winds your ancestors once danced with. You remember, don't you? It's in your DNA, not as weapons, but as children of the stars themselves. The dragons responded, their stellar patterns shifting in harmony. Even the youngest drakes seemed to understand, instinctive memories stirring in their engineered genes. Nova took the lead, positioning himself at the chamber's center. Facility shields failing, announced the automated system. Catastrophic breach imminent. Skylar placed her hand on Nova's neck, feeling the pulse of stellar energy beneath his scales. Together, she whispered. Show them what you can really do. As the facility's shields collapsed, the dragons moved as one. They arranged themselves in a complex, three-dimensional pattern, their bodies forming a living lattice throughout the facility's upper levels. Their scales began to glow brighter than ever before, resonating with the approaching storm. The first blast of solar radiation hit like a physical wave. The facility groaned, but where the dragons gathered, the energy was absorbed, channeled, transformed. Nova led the effort, conducting the massive power exchange like a symphony of stellar forces. In the observation deck, alien scientists watched in awe as their instruments recorded the impossible. The dragons weren't just blocking the radiation, they were using it, growing stronger, their genetic potential unlocking in ways the original engineers had never imagined. Remarkable, breathed Director Nixos. They're not just surviving the storm, they're thriving in it. Through her neural link with Nova, Skylar felt the exhilaration of the dragons as they rediscovered their cosmic heritage. This wasn't about military applications or scientific protocols. This was about becoming what they were always meant to be. Hours passed as the storm raged. The dragons maintained their protective formation, their combined energy field growing stronger with each solar burst. When the storm finally passed, not a single section of the facility had been breached. The dragons descended slowly, their scales shimmering with absorbed stellar energy. Many had grown during the experience, their forms evolving in response to the pure solar power they channeled. Nova's wingspan now stretched wider than ever, his scales containing patterns that mimicked distant galaxies. I never believed it possible, admitted the Arovian engineer, examining the facility's readings. They've completely rewritten our understanding of their capabilities. Skylar moved among the dragons, checking each one personally. They were tired but triumphant, having discovered a truth about themselves that no amount of genetic engineering could have predicted. They weren't just biological weapons or scientific specimens, they were living bridges between terrestrial life and the cosmic forces that birthed them. Director Nixos approached, his crystalline form reflecting the still glowing scales of nearby dragons. The Galactic Alliance will want to know how this was achieved. They'll want protocols, procedures, documentation. Skylar smiled, watching Nova help a younger drake adjust to its evolved form. Tell them the truth. Sometimes the greatest discoveries happen when we stop trying to control and start trying to understand. The facility hummed with new energy as systems came back online. But something else had changed too, a shift in the very relationship between species. The dragons had proven themselves not as servants or weapons, but as partners in humanity's journey to the stars. A new understanding. 6 months after the solar storm incident, the interstellar cultivation facility had transformed beyond recognition. Gone were the sterile containment cells and military-grade barriers. Instead, open spaces filled with stellar energy allowed dragons to move freely, their evolved forms creating constant auroras against the facility's quantum architecture. Skylar stood before the Galactic Alliance's High Council, Nova's impressive form beside her. Representatives from 100 spacefaring civilizations filled the chamber, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Even the usually stoic Vraxian delegates leaned forward with interest as she presented her findings. What began as a dragon breeding program has evolved into something far more significant, Skylar explained, activating a holographic display. The solar storm didn't just prove their capabilities, it awakened genetic memories we never knew existed. The display showed footage of dragons working alongside alien scientists, their stellar energy being harnessed for peaceful applications. Young drakes helped stabilize quantum reactors, while older ones assisted with deep space navigation and solar shield maintenance. Most remarkably, added Director Nixos, his crystalline form glowing with pride, the human emotional connection proved key to unlocking their true potential. Not as weapons, but as partners in our cosmic endeavors. The Quantum Mind Collective swirled with excitement as they processed the data. The implications for interstellar travel alone are revolutionary. Their ability to navigate solar winds could reduce long-distance journey times by 60%. Nova demonstrated by creating a miniature solar field, his scales channeling stellar energy with precise control. The chamber filled with gasps of wonder as he shaped the energy into a perfect model of nearby star systems. But perhaps the most significant change, Skylar continued, is in our understanding of cross-species cooperation. The dragons have shown us that power doesn't have to mean destruction. Connection doesn't have to mean control. She shared records from the facility's new training program, where humans and aliens work together to build relationships with the dragons. Young cadets from various species learn to communicate through emotional resonance rather than force, each bringing their unique perspectives to the process. The facility is no longer just a research center, Skylar explained. It's becoming a hub for interstellar cooperation. Dragons born there now choose their own paths, some join exploration teams, others assist with environmental restoration projects. Some even help teach the next generation of handlers. The High Council deliberated, their discussion rippling through universal translators in dozens of languages. Finally, the chief administrator, a being of pure energy contained within a quantum matrix, spoke. When we first allowed humans into our dragon program, many questioned the wisdom of involving such a young species, they said, their voice resonating at multiple frequencies. Now, we question our own wisdom in not seeing sooner what your kind could bring to the galaxy. The announcement that followed would change the course of interstellar relations. The facility would be expanded, becoming the first galactic center for harmonic species development. Its mission, to explore and nurture the potential in all beings, regardless of their origin. Later, as Skylar prepared to return to the facility, she found a group of alien scientists gathered around Nova in the landing bay. The massive dragon was showing younger drakes how to safely channel solar energy, his movements gentle and precise. "You've changed everything," Director Nixos said, approaching her. "Not just the program, but our entire understanding of what's possible when species work together." Skylar watched as a young Vraxian cadet bonded with a newly hatched drake, their natural distrust of each other giving way to curiosity and connection. "Maybe that's what the dragons were trying to teach us all along," she replied. "That the greatest strength comes not from domination, but from trust." As their transport vessel lifted off, Nova creating a protective stellar field around them, Skylar reflected on her journey. From a chance encounter during a school field trip to revolutionizing interstellar relations, it all seemed impossible. Yet here they were, human, alien, and dragon, flying together toward a future none of them could have imagined alone. The facility gleamed below them, its quantum barriers now tuned to the harmonious frequencies of dragon songs. Inside, the next generation of handlers, human, alien, and everything in between, were learning what Skylar had discovered by accident, that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from controlling nature, but from learning to listen to it. Nova rumbled contentedly, his scales reflecting the light of distant stars. In his eyes, Skylar saw not just the reflection of their shared journey, but the promise of countless adventures yet to come. The dragons had found their true purpose, not as weapons of war, but as bridges between worlds, reminding all species that in the vast expanse of space, understanding and cooperation would always triumph over force and fear.